My name is Noah Ellis. I was 11 the year my father left me at exit 42 off Route 9. If you're imagining a dramatic fight, screaming tires, or a goodbye, don't. That would imply it mattered enough to be emotional. It didn't. It was casual, cold, the kind of cruelty that wears a smile. It was July. The sun was thick and orange, the kind that bleaches your forearms when they rest too long on a car window. We were halfway through what Dad called a boys' weekend. His idea. Just me, him, and Trisha, his new wife, who smoked menthols and called me Kid instead of my name. We were headed somewhere vague. A cabin, a lake, a boat. He hadn't really said. That should have been the first sign. Trisha had her feet up on the dash, chipped red toenail polish glinting in the sun. Dad had the window cracked just enough for the cigarette smoke to escape, but it never really did. The car smelled like gas station coffee and cologne that tried too hard. I had drawn a map. It was in my lap, folded carefully, with dotted lines marking possible stops for snacks. I even used my new markers. Dad hadn't looked at it once. Need to stop for gas, he said, around a sip of iced tea, steering with one hand. Trisha looked over her sunglasses and smirked. Yeah, and I gotta pee like crazy. They pulled into a rest stop, one of those sad, cracked concrete ones, with 2 vending machines and a bathroom that smelled like bleach and old piss. I was in the back seat with a peanut butter sandwich in a Ziploc bag, my backpack on my lap. I started to open the door. No need, Dad said. We'll be back in a sec. Just gonna fuel up, stay put like a man, all right? He handed me $1. A single crumpled dollar. Get yourself a soda or something, he added, like this was a treat, like I hadn't packed my own lunch. Okay, I said. I wanted to ask where the gas station was. I didn't see one, but I was too slow. The door slammed. Trisha blew me a kiss, laughing, and then they got back in the car. I remember the sound, the engine coughing to life, the radio blasting Bon Jovi, the window rolling down just enough for Dad to say, "Don't wander, we'll be right back." And then he winked. Then they drove off. I waited. The first 10 minutes were nothing. I kicked gravel, studied a busted vending machine, ate half my sandwich even though I wasn't hungry. I watched cars pull in and out. A little girl with pigtails waved at me. Her mom handed her a juice box. I told myself Dad probably had to drive a few exits to find gas. Maybe Trisha had to stop for tampons. Something. An hour passed. Then another. The heat started to press down. I moved to the shade behind the bathroom wall where the ground was stained with oil and old gum. I used the $1 on a Sprite. It was warm. A family of 4 pulled in around hour 3. The dad had a baseball cap. The mom wore sandals with daisies on them. Their boy was about my age. He asked if I wanted to kick the ball around. I said no. I didn't want them to see that I was waiting. Hour 4 was when I started to notice my legs shaking. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but I had that feeling you get when you knock over a glass in a restaurant. That long moment between the crash and the world noticing. A kind of silence that buzzes. I sat on the curb and held my folded map. My name was written in Sharpie in the corner. Noah's trip map. There were little doodles of trees, arrows, a boat. I'd spent hours on it. Now it looked stupid, like something a kid makes for a trip he'll never take. Around hour 5, a man in a truck pulled up. He looked like a cartoon version of a grandpa. Balding, kind eyes, oil-stained shirt. He got out to stretch, then did a double take. "You okay, son?" I nodded. Swallowed. "Just waiting. For your folks?" "Yeah." He hesitated, looked down the road, then back at me. "How long you been waiting?" I didn't answer. He looked at my backpack, my map, the melted Sprite bottle beside me. "You hungry?" "No." "You sure?" I nodded again. He opened his truck door and came back with a bag of trail mix and a bottle of cold water. "Take it anyway." I took it. "Thank you." He sat next to me on the curb for a minute. Didn't ask more questions, just sat there, eyes on the road. "You know," he said after a while, "I got left once too. Not here. Different kind of leaving, but same hole in your chest." I looked at him. He didn't say anything else. Then he stood, stretched again, and walked to the bathroom. When he came back, he said, "I'll be heading out west. If they're not back by dark, I can give you a ride into town. There's a station with a phone." I nodded. Okay. They didn't come back. At exactly 6 hours, I stopped waiting. We drove into the nearest town. He dropped me at a police station where I said the words I'd been holding in my throat all day. My dad was supposed to come back. He didn't. The woman at the front desk blinked twice. "Sweetheart, what do you mean he didn't?" "He said he was getting gas," I said, and my voice cracked once. "Then they drove away. They called child services. They asked if I had any relatives. I gave them my mother's name. She died when I was 7. They asked if I had any allergies. I didn't. Then they took me into a back room, gave me some crackers, and asked more questions. I never told them about the $1. or the wink, or how I'd folded my map 27 times to keep it from tearing. That part was mine. I didn't cry that night. Not when they found me a temporary placement, not when they gave me a donated teddy bear with the tag still on. I just lay in bed, eyes open, listening to the sounds of a house I didn't know, the ticking clock, the rustle of sheets from the bunk below me, the faint bark of a dog outside. Somewhere Dad and Tricia were probably laughing again, telling people some version of the story that made sense to them. Maybe they said I ran off. Maybe they said I got dropped with a cousin. Or maybe, and this is what I started to believe, maybe they never said anything at all. People think abandonment is loud, like a slammed door or a shouted curse, but most of the time it's quiet. It's a lie told in a calm voice. It's a car pulling away with the window rolled up. It's a map left folded on your lap that never mattered to anyone but you, and it's the part of you that waits anyway. That day a boy was left behind at exit 42. The man he became, he didn't forget. There's a file in some office that says, I entered the foster system on July 16th, 2009. Male, 11. No known allergies. No guardian present. That's how it begins. What it doesn't say is that the first night in foster care smells like lemon cleaner and sadness, or that the sheets feel like paper, or that the volunteer who gives you your toothbrush avoids eye contact when you ask if your dad called. He didn't. They placed me with the Wilkersons first. Nice enough couple, older, smelled like cinnamon and medicine. They kept a bowl of butterscotch candies near the door and had a plastic cover on the couch. I wasn't supposed to sit on. They had rules. Nothing hard, just sharp around the edges. No shoes inside, dinner at 6, no closed doors, ever. Mr. Wilkerson had been in the Navy. Woke up early, drank black coffee, and spoke like every word cost him something. He didn't talk much, but one night when I forgot to take the trash out, he sat me down. Not to scold me, just to say, "You're not invisible here, that's a good thing." I didn't answer, but I remembered that. They couldn't keep me long. Something about state policy and how they only took short stays. I didn't ask question. You learn quickly that the less you ask, the less you owe anyone. The next house wasn't like the Wilkersons. It was a younger couple, Chris and Janet. They had 2 foster kids already both younger than me and a teenager who barely looked up from her phone. They played nice for social workers, kept juice boxes in the fridge and Disney movies on rotation. But behind closed doors, they were different. They were, you're lucky to be here kind of people. The kind who reminded you every week how much the state was paying to keep you fed. Janet took photos during dinner for the agency and told me to smile more. Chris locked the pantry at night and said it was to discourage hoarding. I wasn't hoarding, I was hungry. One afternoon, their biological son, a pale, mean-eyed kid named Austin, took my backpack and dumped it out in front of his friends. They laughed at the fraying straps, the mended zipper, the notebook with my name scribbled on the cover. "You still got that dumb map?" he asked, waving the folded paper in the air. "What are you, 5?" I didn't answer, just walked over and picked it up. Later that night, Janet told me I needed to lighten up and not take jokes so personally. I nodded. Then I asked to be moved. By 13, I'd lived in 5 homes. By 14, I stopped unpacking fully. Just kept everything in my duffel. Left the tags on clothes. Memorized emergency contacts and bus routes in every zip code I landed in. That's when I started working. A local diner near the 5th placement let me wash dishes after school. No official paperwork. Cash under the table. The manager, Ray, had a glass eye and a bad knee and said, "You show up, I pay. You don't, I don't. Fair." He taught me how to scrub pans without ruining the finish, how to stack glasses so they wouldn't tip, and how to fake a smile when customers complained about cold fries that weren't cold. Ray wasn't warm, but he was steady. "Keep your head down," he said once, handing me a rag. Life's got a long memory. Be the guy people don't regret hiring. I became that guy. Every check I got went into an envelope I kept under my mattress. Every tip went into a jar marked college or escape. I didn't know which I wanted more. At school, I kept my head low and my grades up. Math came easy. So did systems, logic, coding, things that followed rules, variables you could solve. I learned to build basic websites from the school library computer, borrowing books they barely tracked anymore. I'd sit for hours after school, copying HTML by hand until the librarian tapped me on the shoulder to lock up. That's when Mr. Beckett found me. He taught physics. Balding, quiet, carried a clipboard everywhere. Not the kind of teacher you noticed unless you were watching closely. "You code?" he asked one day, glancing at my notebook full of syntax. "Sort of," I said. "Just tutorials. You ever think of applying to MIT's online youth program? Free courses, good for people who think in formulas." I shrugged. I didn't think of myself as someone who got into anything that started with MIT. He printed the forms for me, sat with me after school, helped me write the essays. When the acceptance email came 3 months later, I didn't tell anyone, except him. He just nodded. "Good. Now you keep going." There were setbacks. A placement in upstate New York where the couple split up mid-year and all three of us kids got shuffled again. A foster brother who stole from my envelope. I didn't report him, I just started hiding it better. A guidance counselor who said, "Don't take it personally if some doors don't open. Kids like you need practical goals." I nodded. Then I applied to every scholarship I could find. At 16, I bought my own laptop secondhand, screen cracked in the corner but functional. I started freelancing, small gigs at first, cleaning up code for local websites, making PowerPoints for people's uncles. Eventually, someone paid me to rebuild their Shopify store, then another. I never used my real address, just a P.O. box in the city. Used a fake agency name, NE Code Services. NE stood for nothing. It just looked professional. By 17, I had my own tiny checking account, a used phone, a refurbished tablet. By 18, I filed my first taxes. No one knew. I graduated high school without fanfare. There was no family in the bleachers, no dad with a camcorder, no awkward dinner photos. Just me in a rented gown, my name called out over crackling speakers. Mr. Beckett clapped the loudest. He handed me a card afterward. Inside was a folded $100 bill and a note that read, "You rebuilt yourself from ashes." That's not just survival. That's brilliance. Don't let anyone ever convince you otherwise. I still have that card. That summer, I got accepted to a state university with a full-ride combination of grades, scholarships, and a personal essay I rewrote 13 times. I didn't visit campus first. I just packed my duffel, the same one I'd never really unpacked, took the bus 3 hours, moved into the dorm, and said my name at check-in like it mattered. That night, I hung up 2 things, a calendar, and the map from exit 42, creased and yellowed, taped to the inside of my closet door. Not because I missed it, but because I wanted to remember, not what they did, but who I became after. I didn't build a business for revenge. I built it because no one ever left the light on for me, and I figured out early that if I wanted to be warm, I'd have to learn how to build a fire from scratch. College was fine. I didn't go for the dorm parties or intramurals or any of the things you're supposed to do when you're 19 and finally free. I didn't have a high school sweetheart or a group of guys to shoot hoops with. I had a mattress on the floor, a secondhand desk, and a whiteboard that I filled with code and logistics flowcharts until it looked like the inside of a bunker war room. My major was industrial engineering, but I didn't care about the degree. I cared about what I could learn before I had to start renting my life out by the hour. In sophomore year, I noticed the way deliveries bottlenecked in our student services center. Packages sat for days. Items were returned because of minor labeling errors. I spent 2 nights in the basement storage room watching how the system worked or didn't. Then I built a program to fix it. It wasn't flashy, just an internal routing system that cross-checked student IDs, package metadata, and predicted pickup times based on class schedules. It reduced missed deliveries by 63% in 1 semester. They offered me a work-study job after that. I declined. Instead, I built a prototype for something bigger. I called it Relay, a dynamic logistics AI that could optimize deliveries for hospitals, warehouses, or universities, not just for last-mile efficiency, but with predictive scheduling based on resource scarcity and usage behavior. Sounded technical, was technical, but the point was simple. Make sure the right thing gets where it needs to go before it's too late. Kind of like what I used to wish someone had done for me. I didn't go big at first. I couldn't afford to, but I registered in LLC NE Relay Systems, using the same NE I'd used since high school. I took small contracts, food banks, public libraries, supply depots, places that needed help, not hype. My first office was a storage closet in a co-working space that cost less than my grocery. My first hires were 2 students I met in a 7 a.m. database systems lecture. One of them coded in silence with earbuds in. The other asked too many questions and always brought extra granola bars. We worked weekend, holidays, through a flu outbreak and a fire alarm that wiped a full night's progress. I slept under my desk sometimes. I made coffee with a plug-in kettle and powdered creamer. I didn't complain. I just built. By the time I was 24, Relay was profitable. Not flashy startup profitable, not TechCrunch headline profitable, but real. Invoice paid, recurring client, profitable. We didn't advertise. We delivered, on time, with better metrics than companies 5 times our size. Hospitals started calling, then a state agency, then a logistics contractor for a national emergency response group. I kept saying yes, and I kept our burn rate low. We didn't rent fancy glass offices. We didn't spend on branded mugs or catered lunches. I didn't even buy a car. I walked to work, not because I couldn't afford one, but because I remembered what it felt like to wait for a car that never came back. Investors came sniffing around after our 3rd major municipal contract. I turned down most of them. They wanted to turn Relay into an app, a dashboard, a data resale machine. I wanted to keep it honest. The only investor I took early on was a woman named Natalie West, a former paramedic turned logistics consultant, who sat through my pitch in a coffee shop and said, "You're not in this for ego, are you?" "No," I said. "Good," she replied. "Neither am I." She wrote me a check for $200,000 and didn't ask for a seat at the table, just updates, and a promise I wouldn't sell to a faceless conglomerate chasing IPO buzz. I kept that promise. We used her investment to move into a proper office, 6 desks, real chairs, 2 whiteboards, no reception. I got better at business, not louder, just sharper. I read every investor memo I could find, studied deal terms, learned cap tables and liquidation preferences and exit scenarios. I never hired a CEO. I didn't need one. I didn't want one. I ran the numbers. I knew how to lead. And then one day, I saw it. A headline in a logistics trade journal. Ellis Freight faces investor exodus amidst operational delays. It was small, tucked between articles about supply chain forecasts and rural transport regulations. But it had a photo. My father, older, thinner, hair grayer at the temples, still wearing that half smirk, like he was waiting for the world to catch up to his brilliance. He was listed as CEO. The company name Ellis Freight was almost offensive in its laziness. He'd turned our last name into a brand, claimed it, owned it, wore it like armor. I stared at the image for 5 minutes without blinking. Then I closed the tab and opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it E42. The next few months, I worked harder, which is saying something. I launched a side fund through Relay's parent company, a quiet shell called Exit 42 Capital, formed through 3 holding firms, registered out of Delaware. Clean, legal, untraceable to anyone who wasn't looking. I started reviewing mid-size freight and logistics portfolios. Nothing flashy, just data, patterns, cash flow, investor churn. Ellis Freight came up more than once. They were bleeding. Not fast, but steady. Quiet erosion, missed milestones, failed integrations. A revolving door of board members who signed on for the pitch but left when the numbers got soft. They were looking for a lifeline. I didn't rush it. Revenge isn't a sprint. It's a sequence. My team didn't know. Not really. They knew I was cautious about investors, knew I liked to review pitch decks personally, but they didn't know that every night I checked one particular Bloomberg terminal report before I slept. Ellis Freight's valuation ticked down like a clock counting backward. I could have torpedoed them early, could have bought shares under aliases, pushed bad PR, outbid them on contracts, but that would have been petty. I didn't want destruction. I wanted something colder, clean, perfect. I wanted to be the man at the table when they came begging. I started preparing, not emotionally. That part was already done, but logistically. I hired a branding firm to build a new site for Exit 42 Holdings, neutral colors, professional typography, industry-agnostic buzzwords, something you could glance at and forget until you didn't. I attended conferences, quietly, sat in the back, wore suits that fit better than they used to, listened to pitches from people who thought I looked young enough to underestimate. I didn't correct them. And when Ellis Freight announced their search for Series B investment with a specific interest in tech-driven fulfillment partnerships, I made a call to Natalie. "You still believe in quiet bets?" I asked. She laughed. "Always." We drafted the proposal together. Then I sent it to their venture broker with a polite cover letter and an anonymous signature. Exit 42 Holdings, LLC. We'd like to meet. There's a moment it doesn't happen all at once where the past you buried starts whispering again. It isn't loud. It doesn't knock or shout. It just shows up. Quiet. Casual. Like a song playing faintly in a room you didn't mean to enter. For me, it was a road trip, not for pleasure. I was headed to a logistics expo in Albany, one of those polite networking events where everyone wears tailored indifference and fake smiles. I usually fly. This time I drove. Maybe some part of me wanted to. I don't know. It was a gray afternoon, one of those days where the sky forgets what color it's supposed to be. I was somewhere between exit 35 and 50 when the sign appeared. Exit 42. West Rest area. 1 mile. I didn't mean to slow down. Didn't plan it. But my foot eased off the gas just slightly. Just enough, and the wheel, I didn't steer it. Not consciously, it just tilted. Right. The rest stop hadn't changed much. Same cracked pavement, same crooked bench near the vending machines. Even the trees looked the same, tired and slightly bent, like they'd been leaning into wind their whole lives. I parked, turned off the engine, let the silence fill the car. I didn't get out at first, just sat there, hands on the wheel, breathing steady. Eyes locked on the gravel patch near the bathrooms, the same spot I'd stood, 11 years old, holding a warm Sprite and pretending I wasn't scared. I didn't remember crying, but I remembered the ache, the silence, the weight. I got out, not because I needed to, just because I had to. Walked across the lot, slow steps, The kind you take when your body isn't sure what your mind is doing. My shoes crunched gravel. A soda can rolled somewhere in the breeze. A truck driver leaned against his rig, smoking. He didn't look up. I stood by the vending machines. Same brand, slightly newer model, still took cash. I slid $1 in, pressed for Sprite. It dropped with a thud. I didn't open it, just held it in my hand. A ridiculous part of me expected to see my reflection in the glass. 11-year-old me, backpack too tight, map folded perfectly, hope like a small, flickering bulb behind tired eyes. But it was just me, 30, quiet and calm. And then I did something I hadn't done in 14 years. I sat down, on the curb, right where I had the day he left, and I waited. Not for him, not for closure, just to remember what it felt like. What 6 hours on that curb did to a kid who still believed the words, "We'll be right back." What it taught me about trust, about silence, about how some people leave and expect you to blame yourself. I sat for 23 minutes. Then I stood, left the Sprite unopened beside the bench, got back in the car, didn't cry, didn't scream, just drove. Back at the office, something shifted. Not visibly, not loudly, but I felt it. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way I flinched slightly when a door closed too hard. The way I kept all my personal files double-backed, encrypted, offline even from my own team. The way I had 6 months' salary for every employee saved in a separate fund just in case. The way I didn't tell anyone where I was going, even when I was just stepping out for coffee. A new intern joined our data team that week. Her name was Claire. Bright, sharp, 22 and eager to prove herself. She sat across from my office in the bullpen and coded like she was chasing something she couldn't name. One evening, long after everyone else had gone, I saw her still there, glasses smudged, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, red pen marks on a diagram she was fixing for the 4th time. I walked over. "You always stay this late?" I asked. She jumped. "Oh, I didn't know you were still here." I gestured to her screen. "Looks clean now." Almost. "There's a latency issue on the secondary call stack. Need help?" She blinked. "You code?" I smiled. "Little bit. We debugged together for 15 minutes. Got it running." She thanked me like I'd just pulled her from a burning building. Then she asked, "You ever feel like you're behind? Like you have to catch up to people who've had more support?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "All the time," and left it at that. That night I reopened an old folder I hadn't touched in years. Archive, Noah, personal, dad inside, a single JPEG screenshot from the news article I'd read months ago. My father's face, blurry, cropped. I stared at it, not with rage, with curiosity. I studied his eyes, his posture. The same smirk he wore when he handed me that $1 and told me to stay put like a man. And then I noticed something. He looked tired. Not sick, not broken, but tired in a way I wasn't. I zoomed in, pixelated, washed out. Then I closed the window. Not deleted, just closed. The next morning I got a call from Natalie. They bit. I didn't need context. Ellis Freight wants a meeting. They're pitching to a short list of 5 investors. You're on it. Do they know it's me? Not yet. Good. She paused. You sure you want this, Noah? I let the silence sit. Then I said, I'm not sure I ever wanted anything else. That afternoon, I drove past exit 42 again. Didn't stop this time. Didn't look. Just pressed the accelerator. Windows down. Sunlight on my hands. Some exits you survive. Some exits you build your life beyond. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and cold brew. Glass walls. Matte black chairs. A receptionist with a Bluetooth headset and the kind of polished smile that never touched her eyes. Everything was clean. Curated, desperate to look effortless. I sat across from a man flipping through Forbes. He was older. Gray suit. Tan lines from sunglasses. Fingers twitching like they couldn't remember how to be still. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? I was just another name on the short list. Just another face in a nicer suit than he expected. Mr. Ellis, the receptionist said, her voice crisp. They're ready for you. I stood, smoothed my jacket, picked up the folder, nothing fancy. No slides, no flash drive, just printed documents, clipped and clean. When I walked into the boardroom, there were 4 people already seated. 2 from Ellis Freight, including my father. 1 venture advisor, hired to look expensive. And a lawyer pretending not to be bored. My father didn't stand, didn't blink, just stared. I saw the flicker, the twitch behind the eye, the millisecond pause in his handshake as I reached across the table. Noah Ellis, I said like it was a stranger's name. Pleasure, he replied. Same voice, less weight. They began with pleasantries, numbers, metrics, buzzwords to cover bleeding edges. Ellis Freight wasn't dying, but it was close. They'd expanded too fast, taken on contracts without infrastructure, bought a software suite that never integrated. The logistics equivalent of trying to run a marathon with someone else's legs. I let them talk. I watched him, my father. He still had that tone. The one that made weakness sound like strategy. The one that turned failure into strategic pivots and temporary headwinds. When they asked if I had questions, I smiled. Just one, I said, flipping open my folder. Why me? The lawyer looked up. My father spoke first. Your firm's quiet, effective. We like that. We've seen your work with rural infrastructure and your lean ops model. You're not bloated like the coastal funds. I nodded. And the name didn't ring a bell? He hesitated. The advisor leaned in. Have you two met before? He smiled thin, strained. No, he lied. I looked at him, long and calm. No, we haven't, I agreed. I went through my proposal, methodical, precise, not aggressive, not flashy. Just clean numbers, solid integration options, and a slow, sustainable path back to solvency. Why are you offering terms this good? The lawyer asked. Because I don't want control, I said. I want return. And that was true. I didn't want the company. I didn't want the name. I wanted the moment. I wanted him to sign a contract dependent on the man he left at a rest stop with a crumpled dollar and a lie. After the meeting, he followed me out. Waited until the elevator doors closed behind us before speaking. Noah, he said, quieter now. I turned. He didn't smile. Why now? He asked. His eyes scanned my face. He was looking for something. Anger, spite, a crack. He found nothing. I shrugged. Why not? You know I didn't mean... You did. He stopped. I let the silence work. Why didn't you tell them? He asked. In there. Because this isn't about them, I said. This is between you and me. He looked older up close. Not just tired, smaller. Like someone who'd built a life out of shortcuts and was finally realizing there were none left. You doing this for revenge? He asked. No, I said. I'm doing this because you need me. He opened his mouth. I stepped closer. And because I don't need you. He signed the deal 2 weeks later. Exit 42. Holdings took a 38% stake in Ellis Freight. Board advisory rights. No voting seat, no public announcement, no press. Just quiet paperwork, quiet signatures, quiet victory. I kept my name off everything. No plaques, no interviews, just clean invoices, precise deliverables. And every time their logistics system fired up, every time a route was optimized, a delay avoided, a contract salvaged, it happened through Relay's tech, through mine. Through the code I wrote on a second-hand laptop in a borrowed dorm, and he never got to say he built it. 1 month after the deal closed, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a folded map. Old. Faded. Marked with pencil and Sharpie. It was mine. The one I'd made when I was 11. Noah's trip map. He'd kept it. Or maybe Trisha had. Or maybe he found it after she left and didn't know what to do with it. There was no note. Just the map. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the same folder as the contract he'd signed. Some people chase closure like it's a finish line. They want apologies, tears, confession. I didn't. I just wanted to prove something not to him, to myself, that I wasn't the boy on the curb anymore, that the man at the table. He stayed. It was 2 days after the deal closed when I first heard his voicemail. I wasn't expecting it. My phone sat on my desk, nestled next to the map of Exit 42 and the folded dollar bill he'd sent. I was reviewing our integration timeline when it lit up. 12 missed calls from an unrecognized number. My thumb hovered, then pressed play. A crackle. His voice. Hesitant. Lower than I remembered. Older. Noah, I need to talk. Please, call me back. That was it. 2 seconds long. No mention of gas, no apology, just his voice, pierced by the tiny tremble of a man realizing he has nothing left to hold on to. I let it play through twice. Then I deleted it, swiped left, but I didn't replace it. It stayed in my recently deleted folder where it would expire in 30 days unless I salvaged it. I didn't. He tried emailing next, 3 times that afternoon. First, a thank you note, polite, measured. Next, could we go over some projections? Courtesy, ceasing the advisor. Last, a terse, please respond. I read them on my phone, at a coffee shop, while sipping a cold brew, watching the barista steam milk behind the counter. Then I archived each one, turned off notifications for his address. That evening, he called again. My assistant, Mara, answered. Mr. Ellis isn't available right now, she said, her tone neutral. Please, he begged. He needs to hear me. I'll let him know you called, Mara replied. I was in my office, tuning out the quiet click of heels in the hallway, when she shut the door and slipped me a note. Your father called again, wanted to meet. I crumpled it and dropped it into the red pile. On Friday, he showed up unannounced. Wore a blazer I'd never seen him in navy, well-fitted, crisp shirt, no tie. He leaned on the glass-walled conference room where I held my weekly sync, heart rate climbing for 30 seconds until I recognized the figure. He cleared his throat just loud enough for Mara to glance up, and then he stepped back. I finished the meeting, thanked everyone, and closed my laptop. My gaze found his in the lobby. He stood there, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. I walked out. He didn't speak first. He met me halfway, eyes on the floor. Then he raised his head. "Noah." I nodded. He swallowed. "Can we talk? Here?" I glanced at the open hallway, the receptionist, the security desk. "Not here," I said softly. "In my office." He followed. The office was minimal. White walls, single desk, 2 chairs, a low shelf with project binders. On the shelf sat the Exit 42 map, taped inside a frame, the worn dollar bill under glass, an empty envelope stamped "Confidential." He looked at them. His face flickered recognition, guilt, something like shame. He cleared his throat, sat without being asked. I did not offer the chair. He started to speak. "I sent you the map, the bill. I thought—" I raised a hand. "Before you say anything," I said, voice low, calm. "Tell me your growth plan." He blinked, confused. "I sent an email," he said. I outlined it. "Tell me now." He opened his mouth, closed it, then leaned forward. "Revenue targets," he began. "Cost reduction. We plan to consolidate warehouses." I interrupted. "Remember Exit 42? I asked. His eyes snapped up. I slid the map forward. Fingers trembling could have torn the paper, but mine were steady. "That map," I said. "That's where you left me." He swallowed, eyes fixed on the faded pencil mark tracing the loop around the rest area. You told me to stay put like a man." I let the words hang. "Then you drove off laughing." He flinched. I reached into the folder on my desk and pulled out my phone. I opened the voicemail, his hurried apology, the crack in his voice. He turned pale. I clicked play again, letting it fill the room static. His tremor, the desperation. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I closed the phone. "We were supposed to be a family," I said. "But you made us strangers." He stammered. "Noah, He reached across the desk, hand out. I watched him. "My father, the man who left me." I did not move. "I waited 6 hours," I said softly, "and you never came back." He blinked, tears glistening. "I'm sorry." I inhaled once. Too late. He tried to speak again, but I stood, walked around the desk, picked up his signed contract, held it between us. "Look at this," I said, voice steady. He reached to take it. I lifted it away. "It's binding," I said. "You can't undo it." He backed off, lowering his eyes. I placed the folder contract map dollar bill into his shaking hands. He looked down, then up. "Please," he whispered. "You had your chance," I said. "I built my own life. You get to live with yours." And with that, I turned and left. The hallway was quiet. He didn't follow. He didn't call out. He just stood in my doorway, head bowed. Mara passed by, glanced at him, then at me. Neither of us spoke. I picked up my bag and stepped into the elevator. He watched until the doors closed. I didn't see him for weeks, but I knew. He was there, outside my meetings, leaving messages Mara never passed on, trying to re-enter my life like a tenant evicted long ago, now begging for a lease renewal. Each time, I did exactly the same. I didn't block him. I just refused. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet decision not to engage, not to give the puppet strings even the smallest tug. And in that silence, you're already free. The first tremor was barely visible. A logistics contractor quietly pulled out of a multi-year agreement with Ellis Freight, something about missed benchmarks and under-delivered integrations. It was written in language scrubbed clean of emotion, just facts, just numbers. The second came 2 weeks later. A senior project manager left without notice, then a second, this one publicly. LinkedIn posts always tried to keep it neutral, excited to announce a new chapter, but people read between the lines. Then came the audit. Natalie forwarded it to me. "Anonymous tip," she said. "You know anything about this?" I didn't respond right away. I opened the PDF, scanned the findings. Inventory miscounts, billing discrepancies, a subcontractor flagged for unethical labor practices, a compliance officer who hadn't filed a proper quarterly report in over a year. All of it small, but together? Rot. The kind that doesn't kill a company with one blow, it just weakens the floorboard under every step, until one day it gives. The board called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but I got the minutes. 3 directors asked for a vote of no confidence. 1 abstained. My father asked for time to course correct. They gave him 90 days, not out of loyalty, out of optics. You don't fire a founder mid-quarter unless you're ready to eat the fallout. I gave them 87. 3 days before the deadline, a journalist reached out. Small paper, regional business desk, wanted comment from a silent partner in Exit 42 Holdings about the state of Ellis Freight. I declined, but I slid the story to a quiet blog that covered startup collapses. They ran with it. Can freight move fast enough? The downfall of a legacy name. They didn't use his name in the headline, but they didn't have to. He called again, 7 times in one afternoon. Each time Mara asked, "Do you want to speak with him?" Each time I said, "No." He tried a new tactic after that, an open letter. It was on LinkedIn, 1,000 words of reflections from a founder, full of half-truths and veiled remorse. He didn't mention me, but the final line stuck with me. The hardest part of legacy isn't building it. It's realizing you may not be the one who carries it forward. I sat with that line for a while. Not because it hurt, because it didn't. Because somewhere in those words, I saw what he was finally seeing. That I wasn't a ghost anymore. That I was real. Here. Unstoppable. The board voted on day 88. I watched from my office. I wasn't on the call, but I had eyes inside. He fought it, made his case, laid out numbers, future projections, promises. No one raised their hand. They didn't need to. The CFO read the decision flatly. Effective immediately, Arthur Ellis will step down as CEO. An interim executive will be appointed. Just like that. No eulogy, no ceremony, just a clean break. Like pulling out a splinter. He didn't call that night. Didn't email. Didn't send anything. But the next morning a white envelope sat on Mara's desk. No postage, no name. Just a note inside. I never looked back because I didn't think you would move forward. I was wrong. There was no signature. Just the folded receipt for the Sprite. I never drank, time-stamped July 16th, 2009. I placed it next to the map. Then I locked my office, walked to the window, watched the city breathe beneath me, and for the first time in 14 years I felt something new. Not victory, not vindication, peace, the kind that doesn't announce itself, it just arrives, quietly, like someone who said they'd be right back and finally kept their word. 2 months passed. The company stabilized. Ellis Freight, or what was left of it, was now just a branch beneath the Exit 42 Holdings portfolio. Trimmed, repurposed, anonymized. The logo was gone from the building, the Ellis name scrubbed from contracts, branding, even internal documents. They called it streamlining. I called it what it was, an erasure. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. You don't keep the rot when you're rebuilding the house. I saw him once after that, not planned. A Thursday, early evening. I was walking back from a meeting. No jacket, sleeves rolled. Midtown was buzzing the way it does when the air feels like possibility. I ducked into a corner bistro I liked, small, unpretentious. Good espresso, bad lighting. He was already sitting there, alone, back corner booth, no laptop, just a coffee and a yellow legal pad. He didn't look up as I passed, but I saw the page, 3 lines, crossed out, 1 circled. I didn't need to read them to know what they were. He was trying to write again, trying to make sense of something that would never fully resolve. I didn't stop, didn't say anything. Just walked past, ordered my coffee, and left through the side door. Some ghosts aren't meant to be spoken to, just seen to remind you they don't haunt you anymore. The map still sat on my shelf. The receipt, too. I hadn't touched them in weeks, but one night, I took them down, unfolded the map, looked at the tiny red circle Exit 42, the place where everything ended, or maybe where everything began. I picked up a pen and added one more mark, a check mark. Not to erase it, not to rewrite it, just to say, I made it past. Claire knocked on my office door that afternoon. Got a minute? I nodded. She stepped in, holding a pitch deck. Relay was expanding new verticals. Healthcare logistics. AI optimization for emergency routing. She was leading the team. I think we're ready, she said, almost whispering. I saw the fire in her eyes. The one I used to have. Still did, on some days. You are, I said. She beamed, left without another word. And just like that, something shifted. Not in the company, in me. That night I stayed late. Cleaned my desk, deleted the folder labeled /archive, /Noah/personal/dad. No ceremony, no backups. Gone. Then I walked out without my coat, let the cool night hit my skin, breathed in deep. No phone calls, no loose ends, nothing left unsaid. A week later, a new investor meeting began. Small team, young founder, hungry, smart. He fumbled the opening pitch, corrected himself, then laughed nervously. I'm sorry, he said. You probably see dozens of these a week. I smiled. Don't worry, I've been where you are. He blinked. Really? I nodded. Once, someone told me to stay put. Pause. They never came back. Another pause. And now I'm here. He didn't get it. Not fully. But one day he might. One day he'd understand the gravity of small things, a curb, a dollar, a sentence. And how some exits aren't exits at all. They're beginnings. The next morning, I walked past the rest stop, Exit 42. Didn't turn, didn't look, didn't even slow down. Because some stories don't need sequels. Some just need an ending. And this one was mine. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.